You're a master of acquiring companies. I'm curious how you think about bringing the managements of those companies when you buy them.
You just have to have a CEO who's engaged. Here in Utah, there is a VR skydiving place. What I've found is the individuals who can't push past that are also the ones who can't push past the mental barriers to growing a great company.
But what would be those subtle questions you've seen people be effective with on?
Tell me about the board you've constructed.
Speaking of interview processes, Ryan, how do you, what are some tactics?
I'll just say, let's just walk around the block. And while we're walking, I will find, without fail, I will learn very insightful things. I think great operators are watching all the time.
Welcome to How I Hire, the podcast where we talk with senior go-to-market leaders about how they find, vet, attract, and grow new talent. This is brought to you by Whispered. Your next role won't be posted. It'll be whispered. Today, I'm joined by Ryan Westwood. Ryan, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Ryan is the CEO and founder of Fullcast. It's a company I found. I knew the original founder, and then I watched Ryan buy it and turn it into something amazing. Ryan is bringing together some of the best minds and tech around RevOps tools and really building a machine. So if you don't know what Fullcast is, get to know it soon. Ryan is a seasoned tech entrepreneur who has co-founded and exited 3 companies, including Simplus, which think of it like a giant system integrator. He grew to over $600 million in revenue. Ryan, you're a master of acquiring companies. You did it with Simplus. You're doing it again with Fullcast, and then building them into a single machine. I'm curious how you think about bringing the managements of those companies when you buy them. Like, how do you bring those people so much into the fold? I watched it with the ones you just announced. I watched it with Bala, who I knew as well too. So I'd love to have you talk about that before we dive into how you hire new exec talent. I think is just a really interesting angle there.
Yeah, I mean, I spend a lot of time vetting and really getting to know the CEO. So even if the technology makes complete sense in our tech stack, even if it financially makes sense and we love it, if I'm not able to get there with the CEO, we do not proceed. Because what I have found, and I've learned it over and over again, when the CEO is stoked and excited about the integration and the company and the future, it is very different. If the CEO's energy is even somewhat down or they're not enthusiastic in any area, it goes downhill fast. And you just have to have a CEO who's engaged. So I think it was the same thing at Simplus. We had a head of M&A, our CFO, COO. I didn't engage any of them, Andy, until I had spent enough time with these individuals. And I was telling you a little bit before we started about one of the ways I do that. I have this, there's the first place in the world that I know of to do it. Here in Utah, there is a VR skydiving place. And when you go there, it's interesting, Andy, because you're only like 6 inches off the ground. They have a scent machine. They have the wind blowing. You put the mask on and it is hard to convince yourself you're not actually jumping off a cliff.
Yep.
It's even dramatic. They have rocks falling in front of you as your feet are creeping forward. And what I've found is the individuals who can't push past that are also the ones who can't push past the mental barriers to growing a great company. So many companies, I believe, people do not realize are limited by their CEO operators and the way they work and their mindsets and mentality. So a couple of the ones I saw actually take the gear off and walk back. And guess what happened a year, 2 years down the road?
Who?
Companies struggled mightily. They did not succeed. And it's been 100% the pattern watching those two things happen because they can't convince themselves, they can't mentally get past the fact that in their goggles, they're like, wait a minute, I see a cliff, but they can't tell themselves and override it. I'm a few inches off the ground and I'm absolutely safe and there's nothing wrong.
I love that. There is a place in Fremont in the East Bay but it's actually a giant fan, so it's not VR. You're literally flying. But it's and so I've done that a bunch, and it does feel like skydiving. You are doing it. And then the funny thing is you see the 6-year-old kid walk in there and just go zip like that above you and you laugh. Okay. So maybe that's an amazing way to figure out if they're like pumped to go on that journey with you. But there are some CEOs that have built great companies and maybe they're tired. So they might be excited about the acquisition and to really, and to lead their team to that point, but they don't want to keep going down that road. Like how do those people still pass your test as well?
That is a great point. And I think the second point I'd make after vetting the CEO is it takes decisive leadership to succeed in an integration.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is you need to be decisive about the role of the CEO and decisive about what you're going to do with the company. The middle ground is where failure occurs. So if you're not really, really clear that we're going to integrate these products or we're not going to integrate these products, and the CEO is going to have this role or the CEO is not going forward, as long as that's understood. Now, the case I was giving is where they're going to come forward with us and they're going to build with us.
Yeah.
But in the case that, like you said, they're like, hey, I'm worn out. I see this all the time. At about 15 years, it's like most entrepreneurs, if you ask them if they've been doing anything for 15 years, they're worn out.
Because they tried everything, right? Like they can't conceptualize anything else in that. Yeah. And I think I've been there once or twice and it's hard, right? And you maybe even at the end in simplest, you acted because you tried every trick that you could think of.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're tired and you want an exit, and that's okay too. I think it's just making sure that's clear to your buyer.
Yes.
And just being decisive about that. Because the worst thing, again, is the middle ground where they're pretending that they want to continue forward, but their heart isn't in it. They sell and the team is picking up on it.
Yeah.
So often leaders think that they can get away with things with their words, but you know it. I know it, Andy. We're watching. It's their actions that are saying it all. How hard are they working? What is their energy like? What does it feel like to be around them? And when a CEO is checked out, we all know. And so you got to be clear if that is the case. And it's okay if it is.
And this is a fun topic. We haven't ever had a guest on that's done so much integration. Okay, so CEO side, now you end up with, you've just bought 2 new companies in the last, I think we talked about in 48-hour period, you bought 2 companies, both of which I loved, adding them to yours. Now in theory, you have 3 CPOs, 3 CTOs, 3 CMOs, 3 CROs. How do you go through that process on your side?
Yeah. So one of the first things that we're doing is legal, finance, and HR are usually really clear. Mm-hmm. We have it covered and we usually communicate that. And usually the company will make those adjustments before we even acquire them. Mm-hmm. Then when it comes to the CRO, the product leaders and everyone else, it depends on the situation. I interview and get to know them. I had one recently, Andy, where he's like, I just want to build cool stuff. Like, I don't care what my title is. If you could just give me some of the, I want to build this AI product, right? And so we're not as concerned with this person's just going to fit right in, right? I had another product person who said, you know what? I'm more design focused. So for example, in the Atrium acquisition, Jason, he is a just incredible designer, and his background with PayPal and eBay, and he builds beautiful products.
They do.
And he had an incredible exit with Monster. And so he comes in with this design background. Well, Bala is the persona of the customer. He is from an IT and engineering perspective, he's incredible. Nobody's going to get more out of their engineering team. So we thought, why don't we put them together? We'll have over product, we have Jason, and over engineering, and the CTO, we have Bala, and we it's beautiful. But I think as the CEO, part of a really great CEO is an envisioning, even when the person doesn't realize it about themselves, where they're great, and seeing their talent and seeing the opportunity. I can't tell you how often, Andy, I can see so clearly that someone is way underutilized in their career and they haven't just been awake to it.
I agree. I think sometimes those conversations can go badly in terms of you can say, hey, I don't think the role that you have envisioned for you is exactly either where it's going to work in our company or you're going to struggle with that no matter what. But if you thought about this one instead and you're trying to find that superpower versus let them hit the Peter principle, Sierra.
Yes. And we have had cases where they're like, hey, I want to be the CTO. And I'm like, you know what? I really like Bala. He's fantastic. And you're maybe 10 years from that. So it's, maybe it's time to move on. And sometimes that's also just a really, again, you just have an honest conversation up front. And I have these conversations before we acquire them.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't want them to feel like, oh, they came in and now I'm having the conversation.
Yeah, I just really wanted the business. I'm not really worried about the people. You're worried about the people too.
Absolutely.
That makes a lot of sense. Do you ever hire new executives into the company, or are you always growing your executives from acquisitions? How do you think about that?
Yeah, we've done both. So our chief people officer, we recruited her. She just gone through taking a company called Purple Public, and we moved her over. And then Jason is from the acquisition, Bala from an acquisition, and then the rest of the team have all worked with me at least 2 or 3 times.
That's powerful. So you've got this group that understands you, your dynamics, and all of that.
Yeah, I mean, I sometimes I think it's funny because they'll answer the question. They're like, this is what Ryan's going to say, right? And they know what I'm going to say before I say it. They can proactively just take care of things, and they seem to run faster and have more autonomy than I think is a typical, while the CEO and executive are getting to know each other. When you've been working together that long, you just, you know what each other, what your preferences are, and you know what you're doing, and you're proven. And so you just go. And so I actually think it's an enormous hack, because first time founders will not have had, I have, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 executives over 10 years with me. So I have 6 over 10 years. So when you have 6 over 10 years versus a first time founder, what we can accomplish together and get done it's definitely an unfair advantage.
I think there's that. Plus, one other thing you maybe didn't say, but you said was you're only having to figure out how to navigate one new exec at a time, right? Like so many people are sitting there and saying, if you think of the 18 months average exec turnover and you're a CEO and you have, call it 6 to 8 directs, you're probably navigating 3 to 4 at a time. You only have one variable at a time that you have to, plus the acquisitions that you have to figure out.
Yeah. And so if you look at it, we've never had more than one in a year time frame.
Yeah.
So I have one, and that is it. And then I dedicate myself to supporting and helping them. And even on the weekend and nights, how are you doing? How's it going? Is there any concerns you have? And like Jason being our newest executive, he's sending me voice texts at night and on the weekend. Hey, I'm noticing this, because they also have interesting perspectives that we might not see as a team. And so I want that information, but I love the idea. I think I hear all the time where we hired 4 execs, and I'm always like, that's really hard on those executives, really hard on them when the CEO already has your responsibilities and you're training 4 leaders all at once. I would advise against that.
Well, also think of the dynamics between each other too, right? Like, so they may not, that your core group has battled out whatever they need to battle, and they're ready to fight the fight together. And there's no, hopefully very little politics with your core group. And then you've got the one new person that you've got to figure out how to integrate into that group versus 4 or 5 people all angling for your attention or for their pet project. Whereas if you've got this core group, they can solve half the problems themselves. So I think that's a problem that a lot of our leaders in this world, it's like people are firing people so fast that they're just not able to build a foundation to build on top of. And you have.
Yeah. And I think it's indicative of, one interesting question to ask a CEO if you're interviewing as an executive is, how many people are repeat executives for you?
Oh, yeah.
Because I see this all the time where I hear people and they'll whisper, "Hey, I would never work for that CEO again," right? It's not like they're going to post it on LinkedIn or something, but you notice that this company became a unicorn, and then they start a new company, and you think they'd have, they've got the Midas touch, they've got a bunch of funding. Why wouldn't they just flock there? And then you look around and you're like, there's no one from the prior venture. And then they're like, oh, there's this entry level employee. I'm like, okay, did you even interact with that person, right? So I think it's an interesting telltale of what the executive's like. But also the reason I've been able to do it is they've all had major economic stakes in the business.
Mm-hmm.
They have equity stakes and they care as deeply as I do. I think one thing that happens, Andy, is if I'm the CEO and I stand to make $500 million, say, and you're the new VP of RevOps, and you're going to make $1 million in the same situation. And I'm like, man, why isn't this person up at night? Why aren't they up Saturday night? There's a huge chasm between me and them in motivation and economics and reputation and everything else. So if you don't give them more to align with you, you can't expect that. And I think sometimes CEOs expect that without giving the economics, and then they're turning over executives way too fast.
I agree with you. I think you hear a lot on these podcasts that we are 996 culture. We are, everything's in it. And I think that works at like the seed stage, and these valuations blow up so fast that they can't, it's like, I was listening to a great podcast on 20VC the other day, and the guy is basically like, so, one of the fastest growing companies of all time, and he's interviewing the CEO, and he's like, so you're 996, right? Like, well, not anymore, right? Because it's like, now we need to hire execs and we need to do all these things, and you can't ask for that commitment. But how does that scale for you? I mean, you've got investors, you've got all of your co-founders with, or your execs with fairly large stakes. You can't give that next exec as large a stake unless you're diluting. And I guess you could dilute everybody else, but that becomes a little harder with the investor side of things.
Yeah. I mean, you're definitely rewarded for being a co-founder.
Yeah.
And the other thing about my 3 co-founders, they've all been working with me over 10 years.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing. When I say a large stake of equity, if it's a double-digit stake of equity, that's someone who I've worked with 10 or more years. They're highly vetted, and now I've engaged, and I know what I have there. They're a known entity.
Yes.
And I would say that those people set the core foundation. And if you've got 3 other people, I mean, think of it like you can, at times where you're exhausted, or you need a vacation with your family, or your family needs you. When you have 3 others, I got to tell you, Andy, the difference between my startups when I had, and it's not that you still can't have a large stake as a CEO, but when I had not shared those types of stakes with my other shareholders in my first venture, I'll tell you what, I couldn't take vacation.
Yeah.
I didn't want to. And if there was a company meeting or something really critical, I felt like I had to be there. Now, if you looked at our company meetings since we, took over at Fullcast, our team probably never knows if Amy's going to run the company meeting, if Lance is, if Isaac is, or I am. It's you never know. And if I have a critical acquisition or a funding round or something I'm engaged in, I have these really capable, strong leaders that it doesn't skip a beat. It's not like everything goes on pause because the CEO isn't there. Executive meetings happen and the company meetings happen, and they're run as good, if not better, than when I'm operating. I have 3 former CEOs on my executive team that were great CEOs. So it's just a different cadence when it just takes a lot of pressure off me. And then I think I'm calmer. I'm a better CEO because I don't feel like I'm the one throat to choke, so to speak.
I agree with that. You see that with a lot of second and third time founders, right? Like the first time founders, it's like, let's maximize the equity. It's founder mode. I need to set the board in the right way where I control it all and all this stuff. And those people are all 25 and they can do that. But I think it's harder. Yeah, you bring a team along and it's much more of a team approach. I think it's the how many repeat execs we're definitely going to add to our playbook around how do you diligence the CEO and the company, right? Because if you don't have those people, like the culture is founder dependent, and in your case, it's not Ryan dependent, it's the co-founder dependent approach. Yeah.
And you bring up a good point on the diligence side. When you are diligencing a company, Andy, I have this theory that the board, what you just brought up with the board construct, you can actually learn more by looking at and reading about the board construct than you can doing hours of questions and interviews with the company.
Tell me more on this one, because I think the board is sometimes like, say you're a C-level or call it a VP level. A lot of the people listen to our podcast like C-level and VP level and go-to-market leadership. But say you're like a VP level of sales or something like that. How would you diligence the board in that case, or is this only something you can really access when you're at the C-level?
No, I think you could actually diligence this in most roles in the company. So here are a couple things. Okay, so let's just go through 4 or 5 scenarios real quick. Let's say it's a 7-person board. We've got 2 independents. We've got, let's call it 3 founder seats or common seats, 2 preferred seats.
Yep.
We got a 7-person board. In this case, what can you take from the company culture? 1, the investors aren't in control. The founders aren't in control. There are independent thinkers that aren't going to be skewed towards the investment firm. And there's those that are not the founders. So in this case, you're going to have a more balanced company and probably a steadier company and company culture, because you still have your founder.
Yep. But
the VCs aren't in control. And a lot of times VCs will sack CEOs way too early and create issues. And then sometimes in later stages, it's totally warranted. But that situation, I would look at and say, okay, I know I have a few independent directors that have been there and done it before. So that's going to increase the probability of success. And they're going to mentor my founders. And then the actual investors and the founders are not in control. Now, let me give you another scenario. 5-person board, 3 founders, two are VCs. They can burn hot if they want, and they're in control, right? So there's a high risk of them going out of business because they're in control. However, it's probably a much funner company culture if the founder or the leader cares about that, right?
But they're a good person that trusts and delegates and all of
Yes. And if not, Andy, really what you could take from it is you should put extreme diligence on the CEO if they have control of the board, because now that will dictate the feeling of the company. Now, let's give another scenario. Let's say it's a public company and an activist investor just took a seat. Well, activists don't get involved unless they want to shake things up and they think things are wrong. There's likely a riff, or the CEO could be fired at any moment.
I've been in 2 of those. There's like likely panic drills. One public, one private, but there's panic drills. Like you got to do this make work job for the board, even though we just have to explain strategy. We have to way over explain strategy, and we have to do 1,000 slides to be able to explain something. Yeah.
I mean, and then even if another board scenario would be a majority private equity. In that case, they're likely not burning. They're going to be methodical. They're going to be very focused on efficient growth, and they're not going to track. If they're venture backed, it's going to be revenue per head. If they're private equity backed, they're going to talk about OTE per head and controlling the cost of each employee down to that level, right? Yep. And so it's a different experience. If you want to grow fast, you're going to want that venture board. If you want to learn like precision and the balance of growth and profitability, private equity. So anyway, the makeup of the board, literally just saying how many people are on it and how many represent common and preferred and who are the investors. Oh my gosh, you would learn. You could answer 25 questions.
So what would be the questions if you were an executive interviewing that you would ask, other than just the makeup of it? Like, are there subtle? Because I think sometimes if you're an exec and you ask too many questions about the board, it actually can raise alarm bells, right? Yeah. Of like, hey, is this person going to get all up in my hair on the board type of thing? So, but what would be those those subtle questions you've seen people be effective with on this?
I would just say, I'm interested in the makeup of the board. Tell me about the board you've constructed so that it feels like you're interested in how they did it and the mechanics, right? So tell me about the board you've constructed. And then as they're able to tell you about the people, you can even if they tell you about the people, you can look them up in their backgrounds. You can see if there are private equity groups. But really, all you need to know is, what is the makeup of the board? Is it founders, investors, common, preferred, independents? Simply that. And you can run that through a series of questions and answer them all by just having that piece of information. It's probably the most valuable piece of information you can get about a company without asking more than one question.
I love that. Yeah, you're not asking, can I meet the board? You're just asking, tell me about the makeup. And I love the way you phrased that question as well, too. That's interesting. Okay, shifting gears, Ryan. We've talked about kind of how to build the org structure. I'd be curious, like when you do need to find a senior role, like how do you find it? Do you use recruiters? Do you search it yourself? Do you use in-house? Do you use external? How do you go about finding a talented exec when you need to plug a hole?
Yeah, I think a great operator is creating a list. I've had a list since I was young of people that I loved working with that I wanted to work with again. I'll give you an example. Pete, my CRO, he and we were cubicle buddies in 2005 at this tech company. And the CEO was there was a CEO transition. There was some bumpiness. And I kept thinking, if I was in a foxhole, I would want to be with Pete. His attitude, unfazed. His focus, never lost focus. And he just kept cranking. And I kept thinking, gosh, this guy is spectacular. If I could work with this guy again, I would love to. So as soon as I got Simplest to the place that I could bring him on, I brought him on, and he did the same thing. And then same thing at Fullcast. And so I think great operators are watching all the time. Literally down to your waiters. Like, what is the attitude and how do people think and work and act and how are they behaving in hard situations? And I've got a spreadsheet, Andy, of all these people. I've even had HR consultants come in and talk to us about benefits. And there was a woman who came in and did a presentation, and I noted in my spreadsheet, phenomenal talent, knew the data, executive presentation was on point, super smart. And then, I'm immediately going to that list when it's time to hire of proven entities, people that I've already seen in action, because I think we're like, let's go see how they do in this performative interview. It's like, well, if you could actually get to a more fact-based situation where you saw them act, not in a hiring and interviewing situation, but actually in a situation where they weren't performing. It was just life. You're fixing a tire on the side of the road and they pull over to help you. And the way they do that, like, those are the people you should be looking to hire. So I keep that list. And then that's where I go, Andy, to fill the roles, is with proven people that I've worked with or seen in action.
I absolutely love that. I'm doing the same thing too. I think sometimes it can be hard to bring them back at the right time, but I've definitely got my list of, like, I really want to work with these 15 to 20 people. And, it's like, I even look at Whisper. It's like, at some point there are 3 or 4 people. I'm like, listen, like, when the money gets there, I will call you, right? And honestly, I think people get to a point in their careers where money's taken care of. And then it's about, who do I work? For some people, it's like, it's no longer about the money. It's about, am I working with good people? Is there psychological safety, which I tell you a lot of people do not have? And then, can you just do great work with the right air cover at the right times, right? And it's like, that's worth its weight in gold so many times. Otherwise, you're one of these people, it's like every 18 months, you're like, you got 6 months of stress before you leave and 6 months of stress while you search and 6 months of stress while you onboard. It's just painful to watch.
It is. As you get older too, you put a premium on the team and the people and that psychological safety. I think about when I've had to work in situations where I haven't enjoyed the team or the people. It has been arduous. I haven't felt the same. I don't approach problems the same. I'm less motivated, right? And so I put a premium. That's at the top of my list.
Yeah, me too.
Compensation and everything else is after that. I actually think you have to have been pretty fortunate and maybe early in your career, if that isn't at the top of your list. If you haven't realized the importance of that, usually you haven't had a situation yet where you've had to work with people that it's been brutal to work with.
I tell a story a lot, but I'll do it once here. But like I care more about who I work for and what's the trajectory of the company than anything else. And so at Carta, really impressive COO, and my tactic is, here's my user manual. This is how I tick. I've already written it. Would you read it and just have a coffee with me, right? Like, I'm not expecting you to write it. And there's two answers, which is fuck it, like, you're here to work for me. Or like, yeah, I'd be happy to do that, right? And that guy has sat down, we spent 2 hours, we talked, and he's just a great individual. And so, like, that's the difference between people that actually care about you and how you work and will give you that. I talked to an exec this week that basically spent 3 hours with the CEO, and the CEO was like, I don't agree with that, or why would you think that? This is like their first time ever doing this stuff. And they were like, I voiced the words, I doesn't feel like you had any psychological safety. And this person was like, oh my God, you just described my situation. And I'm like, red flags all over the place, like, run away from that.
Yeah, life's too short for that. And if you're already seeing that tension in the interview process, it's about to get really scary. I would run.
Yeah, I would agree. Speaking of interview processes, Ryan, how do you, what are some tactics you've got on that side? What works for you?
Yeah. So one of the questions I love to ask that's a little bit unique is, what is something in your life you worked really, really hard at that you're proud of?
Mm-hmm.
That is another one of those questions that answers 20 other questions. I think that it's really interesting to hear people's answers, because you immediately get to understand what's most important to them in their life.
Yep.
Like where their priorities are, or at least what their priority was for an extended period of time. You also get to hear and see the magic of what happened and how it happened, and how do they talk about it? How do they talk about the other people involved? What did they do? All those things, it tells you how they work in a team. It tells you what they prioritize in their life, what they're excited about. And honestly, if they can't answer a question of anything they've worked on that they're really proud of, that's also an indicator of something to look out for.
I ask, where did you do your best work? And I just paused there. Tell me about this. Where have you done your best work? And a lot of people won't have a good answer. They will flub it. They will drone on. They will do. If you don't know the answer to that question, like your question or mine, like, it's probably a sign, right?
Yeah. No, I think it's an interesting sign. I've always phrased it, Andy, as, what is something you're really proud of? Because sometimes they'll say their family.
Yeah.
I want them to know that it could be much broader than the setting of the interview. And I want to get to know them personally. They might tell me they were a professional skateboarder. And then that gives me another interesting thing to figure out, okay, are you competitive? What were you like? How did you practice? How did you prepare? It just always leads to even more insightful questions for me. And so that's just one question I've loved.
Do you do background references? I know we talked about your other favorite interview tactic, but maybe tell both that one, and then also, how do you think about references?
Yeah, I do. I do think it's really important to get a feel for background. And typically I'll go to LinkedIn and immediately with Navigator, look at who I'm connected to and try to back channel and figure that out.
What stage in the process do you do that?
Oh, not until I'm very serious.
Okay.
Until I feel like, okay, this is go time. I like this person, unless there's like a strong indicator that something else is there. Top three, I would say.
I agree. Some people, there are a couple CEOs I've met or heard about that will do it at the very early stages, and they can actually blow up a candidate that's quietly looking, right? So I think the later stage makes sense to me.
Yeah. Well, and I have had some where I was excited, but the reality is I don't think I've had any that surprised me in any way that changed for like whether I hired or didn't. Usually I was able to get indicators beforehand. The other question around interviewing, I have found that there are many professionals that are very, very good at interviewing.
Yes.
They're professional interviewers. And some of these leaders know exactly what to say to a founder, CEO like myself and how to say it. They've talked to 25 people very similar to me, and they know exactly how to speak to me. But what I have found is if I insert any physical activity, I get to see the natural kind of the essence of them. And so I love to fly fish. Fly fishing takes patience. It takes precision. It takes strategy. It's a beautiful sport that I love, and you learn a lot. And so that's one thing I love to do. Or just walking. I'll just say, let's just walk around the block. And while we're walking, I will find, without fail, I will learn very insightful things. I've never been on a walk in a interview process where I didn't pick up on really great nuggets that I never gathered in the interviews.
I love that. I'm almost picturing your mind when you're walking with somebody, right? Like you're sitting there observing and the questions you're doing around it. But that is the fishing. We talked about the skydiving. I also, another one that I've used in some cases is like the indoor rock climbing, because literally either they're holding your life in their hand or vice versa is a really good one on that side. I haven't used it in an interview, but I've used it in other scenarios to get to know folks.
Like it.
So that's a good one. Okay. I'm trying to think, so we talked a little bit about how do you make new hires successful. You talked about kind of, I think if I remember correctly, like giving them the space to kind of figure it out as well too. But I'd love to hear a little bit more, like how do you make new folks to the team, either people you've acquired or you've hired in to be successful?
Andy, I'm nerdy enough that during the time when I wasn't operating a company, I wrote a 50-page document I called the CEO Operating Rhythm.
Ooh, I like it.
And I documented everything that I've learned about being a CEO and my kind of philosophy for operating a company. And it's a live document. I keep updating as I learn new lessons. And I go through that entire document with a new executive because I want them to get to know me, to get to know the rhythm of the company. And I have portions of the document specific to their department. So I do the piece that is their department and then the CEO kind of portion of it. I don't always go through the other departments. And then I will get them to a point where they're like, I want them to feel like they've been working with me for 3 years.
Yeah.
Because they're like, oh, I know exactly what to expect. I know how he thinks, what he's doing. I see his even the Myers-Briggs, everything. I can see all this stuff about Ryan and how he operates and thinks. And what I'm hoping is that we're able to get to know each other in a much more rapid fashion. And the rhythm that I like to build the business, like one of my speed is my favorite strategy.
Me too.
I love to move really, really fast. So that is something in the document where we go into detail and they get to know me and how I think and operate. So that's one thing I've done that has made, I think, a really big difference. The other thing is I will check in a lot more frequently, Andy. I want to check in on a daily basis and then at least weekly have a Zoom call or face-to-face, because I want to make sure they're supported, they don't have questions, and I can expedite things. I think that makes a really big difference. And then I want them to meet with all the other executives in the first week and spend time with them. So I have them do that and get together and spend time. And then I have all those executives report back to me how it went and what their thoughts are. So those are a couple things that have helped me get executives up to speed quickly.
I love this, man. How thoughtful you are on this stuff. It's, I feel like we probably hit time and we can go for another hour or two, hopefully over a fly fish the next time for sure. I discovered it recently and I love it too. Well, honestly, if you are a CEO of a company selling to RevOps and you haven't yet spoken to Ryan, go speak to him. You should learn about the machine that he's building. I've been lucky enough to learn about it, and I'm excited for our next conversation.
Well, Andy, thanks for being an advisor and being involved with Fullcast. We appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
That's fun run for sure. Thank you.
All right.